Welcome, everybody. This is Rafa once again coming to you with Mystic Times. I'm extremely happy to be sharing once again another great conversation with an amazing guest. Today we have back the great Lindsey Scharmyn. We had her on a very short time ago, more or less. we actually tried to schedule one more conversation in the middle, but it just didn't happen. And so, yeah, I'm excited again to have you back. Last time we talked about this like orgone energy and you can remind me the name of the thing. We talked about all of these crazy spiritual technologies, and I wanted this time to see what we can share with people about the spirit realm, and in particular connecting with the spiritual realm in search of guidance, maybe getting to know our guides, who they are, what they are, why this possibility is available for us, and whatever else comes up. So how are you, Lindsey?
I am very good. It's a morning here, and so but I should be fully awake at this moment, this late in the morning. But it's just been one of those days where everything is a little bit later and slower and sort of deeper than usual. So I feel very relaxed. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, I am too. It's what time is it? It's 1 p.m. here, and yeah, we're having a very beautiful spring day, which has me very cheery and and happy. Yeah, just now, as you were hearing, we had a few birds in front of the window, and that was very beautiful. I really like when I can start to notice spring coming is when I see the first. Well, what's the name of this bird? The spring birds, the tiny ones that are black on top and white on the bottom with a fork tail.
Oh, it's swallows.
Swallows,
Right?
yeah. When I see the first swallows each year, I'm like, yes, spring is already here, and I'm seeing them coming earlier and earlier the last few years. So I don't know if there's like spring is coming earlier here, or what they run away from autumn, I guess, or from fall over there. Fall is starting sooner maybe, but I really like how everything has a kind of balance, and everything has its time, and sometimes it's earlier, sometimes it's later, and and sometimes we can sleep a little bit more, sometimes we can we can eat a little bit later, or and do our things in adapting to the rhythm of the Tao. And I mean, it sounds a little bit too much what I'm saying, but
It's true though.
we
Yeah.
think of stuff like the Tao or spirituality as something like very out there and very like non-practical, or very what's this word? And I'll let you talk, but this thing of something that's very like exclusive, it's like, oh no, it's just for those people, those special people who do these practices, but everything is spiritual, and spirituality is like the backdrop to everything that we're experiencing.
Yeah, it's very well said. That's exactly sort of the way. I mean, the Tao is the way, right? And that is the way, is to just be very truly and honestly exactly who you are and where you are. And that means in spring you enjoy spring things, and in the summer you enjoy summer things, and you do summer things, and you don't do summer things in winter, right? And it's so simple, but it's obvious. But at the same time, like you said, people then have been so sort of disconnected to it, or deluded into believing that it is something separate from them or outside of them, or something they have to attain. And in a way, it can be something you have to attain, but really, truly, it's always been inside of you. And it's always been exactly what you are, and you've always been it. So really, it's not attainment of something that you're striving towards that is in the distance, but it's something that you're attaining by unlayering, right? I sort of describe it as like peeling away what isn't actually you, and what's been put on top of this thing that's always been living in your heart, in your soul. It's right there. And those types of things I think are underrated as to like progress you on your spiritual path, the types of things like planting a garden in early spring and tending it as it grows, through the summer, or taking walks down by the lake or the river because the weather's nice, or bundling up and staying inside and cuddling because the weather is cold and it's not very fun outside, and putting on a fire. Like, these things are also part of the spiritual path, right? For most people, at least. I guess some people need to go sit in a cave on the hard ground and meditate for 60 days while they fast or something. That's also cool, but
but only
it's
until
they
realize what you just mentioned, I guess.
Yeah. Then it's everywhere all the time.
It's like, let's do the extreme thing until we realize that we should do the middle way. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
This weekend, it was, even though it's already spring here, we had a very kind of cold and rainy weekend, so we stayed inside and had allowed ourselves time to rest and to just do nothing and be in silence, or not in silence. I mean, we talked a lot, but to be in a there's this thing of like productivity, but not just productivity, of like active mode all the time, in current society. So we allowed ourselves to be in a more passive, in a receptive mode, and just to allow for integration, that downtime.
That's another thing that I think so many people forget or move past or just ignore. And it's exactly what you're describing. Half of our spiritual life, at least, is in this receptivity, right? There's a yin and a yang. And so there's a time for that active and the doing and the going out and the being in the world. And then there's a time for just sitting and receiving. And I'm going to confess, I'm a really way worse at the slow, receptive, that side of things. So becoming a meditator had been like a pretty big challenge for me, because my brain, what it really is actually is it's a product of my trauma. When I was young, a lot of people, I learned later, react to trauma in this way. And I did develop CPTSD, which is extreme trauma, syndrome. And so I didn't realize, though, that my almost obsessive focus on getting things done, on doing them well, on doing them right, on getting further, on accomplishing what I needed, and really it all centered around trying to make sure that I was safe, right? I need to get this degree so that I know that I have this job, so that I have this much money, so I have healthcare, so I have this and that, and I have to be safe. I have to be safe. So I have to get this done and this done. I have to be perfect at all of it, so there's no chance that I won't be safe, right? This is actually a trauma response too of people. And even if you don't have CPTSD, this, like you were saying earlier, our society, our culture around the world really does push that sort of mentality of like, look, if you want to be safe, you've got to work hard. Like, you've got to go. You've got to get it. If you want to be accepted, you've got to go to all the events, and you've got to dress the right way, and you've got to make your hair perfect, and you have to do this, and this, right? And so we have all of that. We have way too much yang energy, way too much active, masculine, forceful moving, and not enough of this receptive, like you're talking about, just stay in, just relax. And people can go too far into the yin too and become really slovenly and sort of, right, like really lazy. And that's a whole other problem. But I'm on the other side, where I'm way more likely to be doing too much, taking on too much, being too perfect about it, doing it too quickly. So I've had to work really hard in my life to meditate, to relax, to purposely schedule in time for just nothing. I have to do that in order to do the nothing. And then to just sit and, those are the moments for most of us where we receive the most profound messages, right? If we're going to get into messages and guides and that sort of thing, that's where we receive the most nourishment from our soul and from source, right? Is when we're doing exactly that. And again, it's different for everyone. Some people is actually, you can find flow state in movement, and you can find that doing and being active is actually how you access your innermost realms and your highest energy. And that's totally possible too. But for so many people, especially in the modern age, it's the yin that we're low on. It's the yin that we're not as good at. And it's the being receptive and still that is a challenge for us.
I'm thinking, about this, the flow state and being active, and those people having that ability to receive while in that more young state. I'm you just mentioned it, and I'm reflecting on that because I can imagine how, I mean, if one of these two extremes is more natural to you or easier for you, you can probably get into that flow state and receive intuitions or inspiration. But I guess on the other side, the one that's a little bit harder for you to activate or to connect with, I think there's probably something that I don't know, that would blow your mind, because, or that would give you lots of clarity, because it's kind of like hiding, or it's that place that's harder for you to reach. So there's a kind of quality or substance there that you wouldn't receive naturally otherwise. There's novelty in there if that's a place that's harder for you. For me, I don't know which one I would say is my main thing. But yeah, my mind is very active, or has been very active always, and meditating, actually sitting down and meditating and growing and cultivating that practice and that process has been such a nurturing experience for me through the years, because it's like, even up to this day, there's times when I sit and the mind is racing, and sometimes or most times it's okay. I just I give up and I just watch the mind, and it's like, okay, I wish I could sit down and be in silence and receive something, but I'm gonna just watch the mind, because okay, today it's like very, very anxious or very stressed, so okay, let's just watch it. But sometimes it's like it's anxious and I don't wanna be aware of that anxiety, so I try to focus on the breath and try to to silence it, but no what's the word, to no avail. And I don't know, I don't know why I'm saying this particularly, but I'm trying to figure out which one is my most.
Yeah, well, you might be very balanced, right? Like you might have.
I don't know, I hope so, but I don't know.
Yeah. It's probably more common than we think, right? I had, again, that extreme trauma that pushed me sort of towards that overactive, go do. Before that, before I really had my hardest traumas start, the sort of seed of trauma within me, I didn't have that, right? I was very much in my balance. I think most of us are as children, because I was pretty young, right? But I had a lot more of I can go and do, and I can also just sit in this tree for an hour and just sit silently with this tree, and that's a form of meditation, right? I didn't know that, obviously, but so I think a lot of times we have this more towards balance, right? We've got the yin and the yang, and it's there, and then events in our lives and our reactions to them will sort of encourage us to adopt one more than the other, right? Because it seems safer or better or easier. So I do think you can have that balance and not have that be something that is such a challenge for you. But that doesn't mean, like you're saying, that the certain practices at certain times aren't a challenge, especially like you're saying, when these emotions are going on, right? When we have anxiety, or when we have sort of depression or fear or ego or shame or doubt or guilt or any of the things, that's when it's especially hard. That's also when it's the most productive, right? We go back to the productivity word, which is almost like, I almost hate that word now, because I'm like, why do we care about productivity, right? Let's try to let that go and just be more about quality and what is actually happening than how much or how often or how, know, but it is the most effective, perhaps, to be in that state and to then find the way through to balance again, back to balance, right? So that's a challenge for all of us. I feel like the better we get at that, the closer we're getting to really truly having sort of released our attachment to those things that we can't control, which is everything, actually. That's the hardest truth, maybe.
Yeah. We were talking earlier about the Tao in the simple things of life, And it's so true how, for example, yesterday we went to a very beautiful park, and we just sat there under a tree, just watching. There was this kind of naturally, I guess, from the rains of the previous day, of Saturday, a kind of, I don't know what to call it, like a water hole or drinking hole or something formed naturally in a particular place, and there was lots and lots of birds sharing that small pond, and washing inside, and shaking their wings, and the water splashing all around. And I don't know, it's like, it was so beautiful. And we miss these beautiful things when we are so much active and so much in our heads. We might, like, maybe you do go to that park and you see that, but you don't pay attention to it because it's not valuable for you at the moment, because it doesn't connect with the productivity thing. And I don't know, it's just, for me, I know I am kind of very, very yin, but that's why I was trying to understand more, right, just before, because even though I'm very much yin kind of guy, sitting in meditation and quieting the mind, or calming down and focusing on the breath, and not having this urge to, like, okay, drop everything and stand up and go do something else, it's still hard for me sometimes, even though my main thing, I think, is yin.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. When you're describing those birds in that, puddle and watching them, I'm like imagining, because then you said, not always, you might be walking by and you might just have something else you're doing, you might not really notice. But this is a funny thing that I do that is like a little trap, right? That I have to encourage myself to release and get beyond and do something different. And so, because I know that what I should be doing is appreciating the birds in the puddle, right? I know that consciously. So I might be walking by and I might be like, all right, I need to go get groceries or something. And I might look over and see the birds in the puddle, and I might go, oh, you're supposed to appreciate that. So look, isn't that neat? That's cool. And then keep walking. And no, you didn't actually appreciate it, right? And there's this phrase that we have that everyone knows, right? Stop and smell the roses. And it's actually maybe like a little bit more, has a little bit more wisdom than we might think, because it's exactly that, right? Don't just stop and notice and pretend to have appreciated, right? Just so you can check the list off, like, oh, I appreciated nature today. Like, that's not the goal, right? The goal is to stop and actually smell the roses. That's an experience you're actually in, you're noticing it, you're appreciating it. If you just stop and look at the roses and go, oh, yep, there's a scent in the air of rose, and keep walking, you didn't actually smell the roses, right? So same with these birds. Stop and actually be in that moment with them and feel how joyful it is to sit in a puddle and shake and clean, right? And how beautiful it is how the water goes like this. And if you're really experiencing it, then that's the goal, right? It's not to just say you did it and then move on. This can be similar for every spiritual practice though, right? I have this, like, my longest standing practices, let's say, so something like blessing water, right? Before I drink it, I'll do a little blessing of the water. So since I've been doing that for so long, sometimes now when I'm blessing the water, I'm doing it while my brain is thinking of something else. And then I'm like, but that is not blessing water. This is not how you do it. But when it becomes this sort of task, right? This checklist.
Mechanic.
Like, okay, I have to gotta bless the water before I drink it. Like, check that off the list. Like, no, that's not the goal. The goal is to actually feel how blessed you are to have water, just water, how beautiful it is.
Sometimes I laugh and I say there's this spiritual OCD, it's like, okay, so you gotta look to the north and this stone goes in the right, and this one, you light the fire and say the prayer and do the thing, and it's all like up here, it's not connecting, and I think it's got something to do with what you're saying, how sometimes the action maybe becomes habit, and because I felt that, when I've asked myself, what's the importance of ritual, why is it important, why does it has it exist, has this idea existed for so long, and I'm thinking, what happens when you're in ritual? You get into a different, an altered state of mind, right? you get into a different state of being, even to say it a little bit stronger, in a different state of beings where you're present and you're aware of things in a different way. But when the ritual becomes just a checklist and a mechanical thing and a habit that you're just doing, going through the motions, as they say, then your conscious state is, you're like actually using the spiritual practice to bypass the spiritual practice, to avoid it. It's like, I don't really know what we are focused in at the moment. If it's like, so I call it OCD because I think it's like we focus on doing the motion perfectly. So it's like, okay, you sit down to meditate and okay, I have to clear my mind. There has to be a blank in my mind. And you're like the whole time thinking about not thinking. And so there's the thought of not thinking is all the time. And then this balance of, because I think something you said earlier was connected to the idea of that all of this is the spiritual thing, even though it's not something exclusive, it's also not something that you can really do. That paradox of, do you do it or does it happen to you, and where do you stand so that you can not do the thing that looks like it, but that is actually avoiding it, and how can you stand there and become kind of like a gate through which the thing can happen. And it's such a paradox, thinking it with the mind, we can get like really excited, oh, I found great words to describe the thing, but then you sit there and you're like fucking it up.
Yeah, no, it's such a paradox, and it's so hard to find that line, right? Because like you said, there's actually so many good practices and rituals that they exist for a reason. There's so many good outcomes from them. There's a reason we do things regularly. There's a reason we have, the same way that people have done it for thousands of years is the way we're going to do it today, right? And some of those reasons are, right, that there's this the morphogenetic field, or the egregore of that practice, is so rich and it's so present in this dimension that when we emulate it, we have higher ability to access some of that energy, right? This is what's great about ritual. And so I talk about this too with, the idea of Jesus. A lot of people are like, well, Jesus didn't actually live, and other people are like, well, he did. And I don't care, right? Because the egregore of Jesus, the morphogenetic field of Jesus, is obviously real. We've seen, I've proven that to myself. This is something that actually exists, and it's super powerful. So it doesn't matter to me if he had a flesh body at some point 2,000 years ago or 20 billion years. Like, it doesn't matter to me, right? That just exists. And so it's easier for me to call on that and contact that and do certain things than to not, right? Because it's so powerful, because it exists. So rituals have that same sort of function. They've gathered this power over this many years. And so they're that much easier for even someone who doesn't have a very high faith in themselves or doesn't have a very strong belief, right? The other side, the practices side, is to build up your belief and your confidence in yourself, right? Because you start having experiences and you're like, oh, well, then that's real and I can actually do that. And here's this whole other side of myself. And then you can make that richer and richer and deeper with practices more and more regularly. But also there's those dangers, like we said, of just relying on that as like this shortcut and not actually being in the moment, not actually feeling what you're feeling, not actually experiencing it, but just mentalizing about it and just describing it and doing all of those sorts of things. There's also, that danger that you just aren't even reaching higher anymore, right? You're just like, well, again, checklist, I meditated today, that's it. And it's like, well, if you're stopped, if you have arrived and you're done now, sure, I guess just checklist things like that. You're just going to stay exactly where you're at, right? And like you mentioned, like the growth is actually what happens when you're really deeply immersed in the thing. You're smelling the rose and noticing the scent and feeling it move through you. Like that's the goal, right? I had this also experience recently that really underscored why we practice things regularly and why we spend a lot of time, with our consciousness immersed towards these types of goals. And it's because when we get into really difficult situations, it is so deeply ingrained as a habit that we don't have to, touch the stone in the eastern place and then put the candle over in the north, or whatever. We don't have to, because we're so attuned with that energy already that we can just call it forth in the moment. And this is, I think, what's really important for people to get to that point. So again, the practice and the habit can become a stumbling block if you don't have a presence of mind, or you can't observe yourself in the moment and really be in the moment. But it also is the exact thing that gets you through really difficult challenges and hardships sometimes. And those can be all sorts. Mine was a pretty sort of minor challenge. So I was at an event, and the event is, I'm going to do tarot readings all day long at this event. And there are multiple people. It's 20-minute readings. They come in, sit down, and the next person's in, and then the next person's in. It's very much like a lot going on. There's thousands of people there. Like, it's a big deal. And I'd never done this before, right? And as soon as I sat down, literally before the event even started, the woman next to me just attacked me. She just started attacking me. She started telling me my booth was wrong, and that I had too much stuff, and that I was wrong. And I was just like, wow, like, we're at a spiritual event, and she literally came out of nowhere without ever having talked to me or known me before, and just started attacking. And this is like, we can talk about what's going on with that on another level if we want to get into it. But that was pretty hard for me, right? I was like, what? Part of you has to, at that moment, go, do I even belong here? Or like, what type of place even is this? Or can I even do this with this woman next to me who seems to actively hate me? Can I channel the source of divinity through for these people who are going to come be sitting here with me while she's right there the whole time? And, but it was like, yeah, I can. I've done this for 25 years, right? And I've channeled this through how many hundreds or thousands of times, I don't even know. And so I just got to step back into that habit, and step back into that trust, and step back into that confidence, because I had done this so long. And there was other challenges that came up in that event, but that I kept being able to just fall back into it, because I had so much already below my belt, so to speak. And so there's both. There's dangers in the over practicing and the, like you said, that spiritual OCD. And there's also this huge benefit that when the darkness comes or the challenge comes, you will just already have that so strong within you that you don't even have to question it. You don't even have to doubt, and you can just be sort of carried through it. And I feel like that's kind of part of what we're doing, is we're like building up the virtue. We're building up the goodness. We're building up the connection to that, so that it is so much easier, even in hard times, especially in hard times.
That was great. I was just putting down, building up the virtue. I like that phrase. Yeah, the challenges that come up, like you were just saying, that woman next to you. Sure, let's explore it further. I think we can then go from that to connecting with spiritual guidance, and which on one hand is like, okay, you sit down for a particular practice to connect, but then you go out into the world, and if you, like Jesus would say, if you have the eyes to see and the ears to hear, you can see that guidance is still present in everything that you're doing. Synchronicities can help you, but sometimes a woman screaming at you can be the guidance as well, even though it's not a synchronicity, or it doesn't seem like one. It's not something that's rainbows and unicorns. It's actually an asshole next to you. But this idea that I keep coming to regularly of the challenges, we hate to have challenges. We want everything to be simpler and easier. But the challenge is, and I think we talked about this last time with you, the challenge is actually the thing that allows you to know that you have grown, the thing that you can sort of, it's not that you need to measure yourself against it, but when you confront a challenge, you actually see, oh, wow, I overcame that challenge. I had this woman next to me screaming. I didn't, for a moment, I got insecure of, oh, wow, I'm going to have to connect with spirit while I'm kind of angry with this woman. And and am I gonna be able, you know, all these questions that you had, and still you did it because through the practice that you already have, you were able to see that, and at the same time measure it against your own spiritual work, and you were like, no, yeah, I can do it. And if that woman wasn't there, maybe that particular lesson, you know, you wouldn't have received that lesson, and that lesson was a message from spirit. Sometimes maybe we think, oh yeah, a message from spirit is like them going, I'm gonna download a new practice, a new modality, a new way of doing readings. I'm going to download a new system of astrology or human design or whatever, or I'm gonna get some information about ancient Lemuria or about the future, or you know. But sometimes the messages from spirit is, you know, when I was learning to do Akashic readings, some of the messages were simple things like, you can do it, trust in yourself. And, you know, and at the moment you think, okay, yeah, I don't need a spirit to tell me that, because it's not giving me anything new, let's say, is what you would think at the moment. But for some reason, you needed to hear that again, you know, you needed to remember that. And sometimes the spiritual messages are just small reminders, you know, of like, you are on the right path, continue, have faith, you know, stuff like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I really sometimes I feel the same way when messages are coming through. I'm like, well, this is really obvious, but I always also remember it's not obvious for everyone. And like you said, sometimes you need the reminder. It wasn't actually that obvious to you because you forgot in that moment to, again, you knew it conceptually, but did you feel it? Were you really knowing it, right? That same thing, like, oh, you are able to do this. You're like, be confident. You have this access to source. Do these tarot readings for these people. Who cares who's next to you or around, right? Like, do it anyway. Do it in spite of that. Do it because of that, because we need even more light here, obviously. You know, we forget the simplest things. Sometimes we forget to really feel them and connect with them and know them on a deeper level. So I'm never as surprised anymore going on that those are some of the messages that come through when I'm connecting with guides and allies for people and bringing through their messages. And I had a lot of, you know, lack of confidence about this at the beginning when I was first starting to work with people one-on-one and get some of these messages through. Is I'd be thinking like, you know, while I'm channeling through the message, I'd be thinking like, is this even important for this person to hear? And I have long since stopped asking that question because of the results that I get. There's something to it, you know, the message isn't just the message, like there is literally energy coming through with it. So as I'm channeling this and sharing it with a person, they're receiving not just the information, right, you know, consciously of the words, but the feeling of it is coming into them, and it's literally affecting their emotional field. Their physical body is healing, right? Like this light is just like pouring into them. And so I have to remember, no matter what the words sound like to me, they're carrying something else with them. They're carrying codes with them. And that person is able to receive that. And that's actually, I try to explain to people, like, that's actually the gift of doing these sessions. For me too, it's just connecting with that level of energy. That in itself is healing and transformative. So even when it seems like a very simple message, it's not really that simple. It's pretty complex, actually.
Yeah, I remember, I know what you mean. This, you know, you get something very simple and you start doubting, and you're like, okay, is this spirit sending, or the guides or whatever sending the message, or is this just me, or my mind, let's say, or my ego, afraid of not connecting, so it's coming up with something very, very vague and simple, you know, like those, like the fake psychics that they will say, oh, you lost someone, oh yeah, and you were close with that person, and it's so general that it applies every time. But yeah, I love this idea of how sometimes, even though the verbal thing may be very simple, there is something very powerful coming through. And you know, just like the stop and smell the flowers, you know, and all those sayings, they are so obvious and so cliche that we, it's like, I think we've understood the idea of cliche wrong, And we say, oh, that is cliche. Like we say, oh, that is just your imagination. That is just luck. You know, we say that is just cliche. I think we should say, oh, wow, that is so cliche. That we should be excited about the cliches, because they are actually pointing at truths that are so important for us and so hard to say in an analytical way, that cliches always go with kind of like metaphors or symbols. They are kind of poetic. And stop and smell the roses. What does that mean? Yeah, it's depending on the moment and on the person, it's going to mean something very different, depending if you're open to feel the meaning or the energy, the light, the codes that are behind the phrase, And sometimes it doesn't even need to be poetic. It can be just trust in yourself, believe in yourself. You are loved. Sometimes, you do a reading and love comes. And I've had reads where it's like love, love, love. And I'm kind of embarrassed at the moment, because I'm going to continue repeating this all the time. But you feel that is what's coming. And then you finish the reading, like you were saying, or you finish saying that phrase, for example, and the person is like crying, and they're telling you, oh, you don't know how much I needed to hear that. And you're like, wow. Because
even I didn't know, but that's what came through for a reason.
Even if you think about it, you're talking with a friend, or you're talking with someone in the street, or with someone, I don't know, you just struck a conversation with somebody. You would never tell them you are enough, you are loved. You would never say these beautiful affirmations. So when they come from spirit, why would we doubt them if it's stuff that we wouldn't say in a normal day-to-day conversation, right? Even though it's so simple.
Yeah. It's very well said. And it is amazing. And that's exactly right. When people are crying in the session and they're like, oh my God, I needed to hear that. That's exactly that energy that comes through. Again, the word love obviously carries that energy, but same thing, right? You could go out to someone on the street, you can be like, you're loved. And they'd be like, well, get away from me, weirdo. Like, yeah, why are you talking to me? But you said it to this person in this moment, and it carried something higher with it. It didn't even come from you. It came just through you. And that higher level is what hit them, and they really felt it and knew it. It's very different to think I'm loved. Yeah, I know I'm loved. Very different to think it than it is to feel it. Just like that rose, smelling the roses. Very different to look and just notice there's a scent of rose in the air than it is to really like smell it, inhale it, notice how it is, notice how it feels, like notice what it carries with it. Very different things. So I think that's the profound healing that happens for people when they do receive these sessions, like Akashic reading sessions or guidance sessions from me, or anything from any of these of us healers, right? Is that they're receiving this higher level energy. And that's what they really needed, right? It's like a relief. And they're like, oh, thank God. And their soul knew that we're not even telling them anything. Their soul doesn't know, because everybody's soul can connect to that and is connecting to that. Actually, it's the ability to really stop and receive it, though, that is different, right? And when they trust that we can help them do that, they're much more open to it. If we could like give people this magic, spell or pill or something that would just make them open to receiving that truth that's already within them, we would be out of a job, because everyone has it, right? And I wish we could. And I know more and more people are moving that direction to really trust that in themselves and be able to just receive that. I will tell you though, even as much and as long as I've been doing this, I still have a hard time just receiving it for myself. I still have a hard time when I'm connecting to guides and allies. I'm like, okay, we're doing this for other people. Like, what message is going to come through today for everyone? When do I ever do that for just me, right? I don't. I have a really hard time doing so. I have to go to other healers to get them to get the messages through for me so that I can receive them, because that's just, something I'm working on. But we're all kind of most often in that place of kind of doubting, or just not taking the time to do it, or caring more about others than we do about ourselves, or whatever it is that's sort of blocking that channel for us. But I'm so grateful that we have each other, to do this for each other, because we all need it.
Yeah. You were talking about this, we a healer or a reader might bring a message across that the other person's soul already knew. That's something that you kind of said before. And I'm thinking how much trauma plays a role in that, because okay, the person's soul knows this, the message is coming through for the person, but it's kind of meeting a kind of barrier of trauma that is probably something at the most subtle level, something mental perhaps, that is or a belief that is blocking that connection. And when the reader comes and says the thing that they already knew, because even that, sometimes the message is so obvious even for the person that's getting the reading, they are like, oh yeah, I already knew that, but I needed to hear it again. It's kind of like when the message comes across, maybe it's because it's coming from another, maybe it's because of the energy that's coming with it, that you were saying, this codes or this light. It's like the thing that was already coming gets kind of like a boost that allows it to go through the trauma, maybe, because I'm not sure that necessarily you dissolve the trauma at that moment, but at least it kind of moves the trauma to the side for a moment, or it gives it enough energy to go through. And even though the trauma might still be there, the person can receive that message and and move towards healing the trauma themselves later through whatever means and in whatever time frame that they might have, right?
Yeah, no, that's very well described. It's there's something about belief too, right? And trust, and that confidence that we were talking about earlier, that I know for sure I can do this for other people. I've seen it over and over again. I've seen people go, oh my God, how did you know that? Or that crying, and like all of these things that confirm for me. And they're saying exactly what you said, right? Like, well, I kind of already knew all of this, but like I needed to hear it. And that's the most common thing I hear, actually, from tarot readings, from guidance sessions, from all of it. So that's true. But they have this belief and trust that I can do that, right? So they're open. Again, if I told them, you can do this for yourself, you can go sit in silence and meditation and receive the same, how many messages in their head are like, no, I can't, or I tried and failed, or this or that, or that's hard, or I'm not special, blah, blah. There's so many from a lifetime. That is actually trauma, right? Too. All those messages are little slight traumas. Maybe it's not like what we would call, clinical trauma or PTSD or whatever, but they're like little traumas at least, right? All those messages of doubt and fear and distrust and whatever. But for whatever reason, I presented to them something that they can trust, right? And so they believe that. And so now it can come through so easily. Or you did that, right? They looked at you and they said, that guy, he can do it. I trust him, right? He has the energy that I just feel good and I can do this now. Then it can come through. If I had a higher level of trust and confidence in receiving that for myself, it's actually not even that I doubt it. It's that I know how hard it is to heal. And I don't always want to go diving into that pain when I receive that much love for myself and just hold it like that. It doesn't hurt, right? But I'll cry and I'll feel exhausted afterwards, because that trauma is dissolving, and that is work, and it is hard work. And so I don't always want to do it, right? It's way easier to do it for other people. So I am also always doing it for myself, but it's easier for me to get a dose of that from someone else. There's that thing too, where like a trouble shared is a trouble halved. So if I'm with someone else and I know they love me and I can receive that from them, then no matter how much of the trauma comes up, I know that I'm in like good hands and we can do this together. I'm not alone in it. So that's also very helpful in this healing journey, to have people for that reason, so that we're not alone. But yeah, it really is about belief, right? And doubt, belief and doubt. This thing that I mentioned at that event, that was part of it too, right? That came up and it was like, are you sure you can do this? Are you sure you can do this? And I was like, yeah, you know what? I am sure I can do this. And I'm going to. And then I did. And it was very powerful in so many ways, for so many people, and for myself included. But it was that, you have to really know. And I even kept saying that to myself, like, I am very capable of doing this. I am exceptionally capable of channeling through this light, no matter the surroundings and no matter what's going on. And I was just reminding myself of that over and over again, because the higher we trust, the more we don't have doubt and fear, the easier it is to come through. And again, that goes back to the practice, it goes back to the ritual or whatever, but this is why people can receive this from us. They believe in us and they don't have doubt about it. And even if they do, it's much smaller than the doubt they have for themselves.
I don't know if you get the same thing. I'm like in the conversation, I'm like constantly trying holding myself from interrupting, because I get like all these messages and information and images and ideas, and like this thing of the message coming down, and it kind of hits kind of like a clot in the like in the nadis, or in the whatever, in the energy system, and I don't know, it's so beautiful to be speaking with someone, and that is connected in this way, and you're talking. I feel like my guides are here, like sharing. I've been kind of disconnected for some time from them, so like feeling them now when I'm talking to you is like so beautiful. Like they put images in my head, like neurons that are the different things that we're talking about. They do like, and I get like images of analogies, like neurons connecting and firing together, and healing, and I don't know, it's so beautiful to get this thing.
I think that's part of why it's so cool to have these conversations as like a collaboration and a discussion more than anything else, because you get to have that exact thing, right? This synchronicities, and like you said, your guides are in there and they're like, oh, this idea here, look, see how that is? Like, and you're like, oh yeah, I understand it way more deeply now. This is actually how we grow. I feel like this is like a master class for anyone listening too, and they're having the same experience where different things are hitting them and they're like, oh wow, like, oh, I get that, that's like this other thing that I already knew, or I already did, already experienced or understood. I think that's what's so beautiful about it.
Yeah, I think it's so also like this thing that you were saying, the light that comes with the messages, the codes. It's this, sometimes when we're speaking, we talk about, normally people talk about the non-verbal, what's the name? The
nonverbal communication.
Yeah, right. That you speak, it's like, I don't know, 5%, 10%, and then there's 90% of the non-verbal communication. But then there's another 100% extra that is non-verbal, and maybe even, I don't know, non-visual or non-physical communication. It's not just my gestures or my tone, but it's like images that come into your mind while the other person is talking, right? And that part, I guess it's gonna be kind of the next level. Oh, and I remembered something else that came to me. It's like, we're talking about this thing of trusting. So people trust you, or you trust another reader or another healer, and you believe in them. And it's kind of like God has multiple personality disorder, and we are one. Each one of these bodies is one of those personalities, and so it's like it's trusting another expression of itself because it doesn't trust this particular one. It's like so powerful how each of us has this focus of attention, and it's like it's the same for all of us. It's like me, this, here, me, present, and I don't know, right now, and over here I feel it. Over there, where you are, I don't feel that, but you feel it there. And it's like the mycelium of the thing that goes under the earth, and behind the stage, it's the same thing that is feeling it here, and it's feeling it there. Yes. But it's not feeling it here. But the part of it that's feeling it here is not feeling it over there. And we are on this process of evolution of consciousness where we are beginning to make that connection. And it sounds so weird, but slowly we're moving to that place where, part of the things that you didn't say might pop into my mind, and as an image or as a kind of a message. And that in a certain way is starting to bridge that gap. I don't know, it sounded so weird how I explained it, but I hope the idea came through.
It makes sense. Yeah. This reminds me of this meme that I saw where there's like a hand, right? And it's like poking up through like the ground or a piece of paper or something, and each little finger is like a different person, but like the hand underneath is actually what they all are, right? And like you said, this energy that's connecting is actually bringing us into a deeper realization of that. I feel like the best place we could end up, well, we can end up beyond this too, but from here, at least the next goal maybe is to look at anyone and anything, and instead of saying like, well, why are they doing that, or like, how could you act this way, or what's wrong with yours, and to look at that and go, why am I acting like that? Why am I doing this? Why did I choose that? Because that is you. And the way I describe it to people too is like, even if you can't accept that you are doing that right now, that this other person is actually a different form of you, you can accept that in some, perhaps if you go with the past life thing, which I do, I think you do, you can accept that at some point you did that exact same thing, or you acted in that exact same way, right? And you behaved in this way and you chose these experiences. So you can still say like, why am I doing that? Why did I do that? Right? Or how, or what might I need if that's what I'm choosing to do? And can this version of me do anything about that? Do I need to, or am I just, observing, or what's my goal and my role here? But to have more compassion for that. And again, I'm not super great at this, right? I try more and more. I shouldn't say I try. I am doing it more and more. But I often look out and go, that's not me. I would never do that. There's something wrong with this person, right? That's way easier than saying, why am I choosing that right now? What is it? That's a difficult thing to get to, but it's back to that, what you're describing, right? That we actually are all different individuations of the same sort of source, and we've done it all, and we've been it all. And we're realizing that more and more, and it makes it easier and easier to both receive and give energy, but also to move beyond our very limited sort of viewpoint here otherwise.
Yeah. So let's take a short break here. Okay, this conversation is going great, but I know myself, and I know people like myself, so I know you. We will start doing the ping pong and getting into the whatever eternal cycle of this, which is beautiful. But I want to just the young part needs to say, okay, let's let's cut it around here, around an hour, and continue on the other side with more on this connection with spiritual guidance with Lindsey Scharmyn. Lindsey, will you please tell people where they can find you? I know your website. I'm trying to share the screen, but I'm not finding my browser. So please share with people where they can find you.
No worries. Yeah, it's at rogueways.org. Rogue ways, not waves, even though rogue waves are awesome. And that is what the name is playing off of. It's rogue ways as in pathways. And rogueways.org has everything I do. You can schedule a session with me there, one-on-one, for tarot, for guidance sessions, for anything. I have my books there. So if you want a copy of any of my books and you want a channeled inscription from your guides or allies, that's there on the site as well. I have orgone that I make and sell there as well. I have tons of writing there. I've got all the links to the show, where to watch and listen, and all of that stuff. So there's just a lot there on the site, and it's the best place to go.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I like how you've divided the services in the very specific things that you share. I love it. Past life, spiritual guidance. Yeah,
I just started doing the past life tarot readings actually from that event. Wow. That event was the first time I'd ever done a past life tarot. My guides told me, you have to do past life readings now. And I was like, well, that's interesting. Like, past lives come up in my healing ceremonies. They come up in my blessings sometimes. They come up in spiritual guidance sessions sometimes, but I've never done a tarot reading for past lives. But my guides and allies told me I was supposed to, so I did. And that was the first time I ever did them, was at that exact event. So, but now I do them. They're really powerful too. I love them.
That's amazing.
Oh, and yes, these are the classes that I offer as well. Thank you for bringing that up. So you can take a class from me. There's tons of them here. I'm adding more all the time. So rogueways.thinkific.com is where those are. They're all video courses, so they're just at your own pace, and you just kind of walk yourself through them. I think you usually have a month to get through them. And yeah, there's a free one there on mantras and manifestation, which is very simple, but very powerful, really powerful stuff. So I wanted to give something, for people who might not feel like they have a lot of abundance right now, or just something to get people through, because I think we underplay just how powerful mantras are. I think they're one of these things that are just so commonly talked about, and that, like we were saying, right, if you've encountered it so often, or it becomes this thing you're not really present in. But if you actually use mantras for manifestation, it can change your whole life.
I've used them for healing, of myself, when I I feel like maybe I've got a cold or it's coming or something like that. And I can attest that they've worked for me. I mean, maybe it doesn't work every time because, it's the spiritual world is so complex. Sometimes maybe you really need to learn the lesson of going through the thing. So even though you might sing the mantra, you might not get it. But I've used it and it's worked, and I've been like very, very surprised by it. So yeah, definitely mantra is so good, and I love how neuroscientists today, they are starting to make the connection between the spiritual world and the scientific world. This is, I'm gonna give credit to my girlfriend for this understanding. She shared this with me, and yeah, it's so true. How they're learning how, I don't know, for example, the sound of your own voice and the vibration of your own voice inside your body helps you with your immune system. And they're coming up with, not coming up, they are like discovering all these materialistic or scientific truths to the spiritual truths of the old days, which in these days, in these times, need to be expressed in scientific ways for people and the mainstream to start catching up. And I love how they're starting to make those connections, and yeah, so beautiful.
Yeah, they can't avoid it. They're one and the same, actually. They're just two different ways of approaching reality, and reality is this. This is reality. So yeah.
So thank you, everybody. You can find me on Instagram. My username is @manrafa, and you can message me there if you wanted to connect, or for a reading, for sound healing, or just for to have a conversation, to get in touch, to get connected. And you can also help support the show, but by joining on patreon.com/Rafa Martinelli, my name. Yeah, and I'll be very, very thankful for anybody that does. I'm also very happy that I'm approaching the 1,000 subscribers here on YouTube, and that's a pretty beautiful milestone. I'm like at around, at the time of recording this, I'm at 890 or around close to 900 already. And I just know that it's going to go very fast to the 1,000. So yeah, I want to thank everybody that's been already following the show. I'm very happy to share all these kinds of conversations with all of you. And I hope you, well, I'm also, just to close the thing, I'm honored by what you were saying a few moments ago of our conversation, which for me was just a lot of fun. You said it's like a masterclass for people. And I'm like, wow, I sometimes don't realize or don't value, the things that I share. And I know it's not just a masterclass because of what I shared, but because of the thing we both did together, of course. But I wanted to say I don't always value or give enough value to the things that I share. I'm very critical of myself, or that thing that you were saying of still learning and still growing. So sometimes I don't recognize the value that I give. And I've had messages from people that help me validate that, but I want to learn. I'm learning to validate it for myself. And well, but what you just said was really beautiful and a great reminder for my own self-worth. And yeah, I thank you so much.
So glad. It's true.
Yeah.
You'll remember more and more.
Also, okay, so everybody, see you on the other side. We're gonna stop this one and continue in a few moments. Bye.